Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Sales. If you're looking for actionable insights and real-world tools to turbocharge your sales starting tomorrow, well, you're in the right place. Your host, Kay Miller, earned the affectionate nickname Muffler Mama when she sold more automotive mufflers than anyone else in the world. In this podcast, Kay will talk to another superstar woman in sales as they reveal uncopyable strategies you can use to rack up more leads, snag dream clients, and take your sales numbers through the roof. Stay tuned and get ready to make more sales and how about this? More money.
Okay. I am excited to be here with Terri Murphy. And Terri is a consultant, author, TED Talk speaker, and she has extensive experience as a communication and connection specialist. She's also the founder of the Women's Wisdom Network. Terri, welcome to the podcast.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I met you through my husband, Steve Miller, not the rock musician.
Was your husband. Before he was your husband.
Before he was my husband?
I think so.
You guys go way back then, because
we go way back. We were both younger.
We've been married for 36 years. So,
well,
I don't know. That we might have been a couple.
Might have been dating.
Yeah, I'm sure we must have been dating at least. So, I mentioned a few of the things that you do and have done, but that just scratches the surface of what you do and who you are. And of course, the full bio will be in the show notes, and I encourage you to check it out. But today we're going to be talking about one of Terri's top specialties, and that is how to build $1 million referral network. How would you like to have $1 million referral network? And as I've been talking with Terri to prepare for this, I mean, she has, what did you say, a Rolodex like no other, right? You've got so many connections that you've made and maintained through the years, which is so impressive. I'd like you to start off and just tell us a little bit about, how you got started and your journey to where you are now.
Well, I started in sales in an area that I didn't live in, and I didn't know anybody with the exception of family. And so I had to figure out fairly fast how to develop relationships, because I'm not a cold caller. I wasn't the kind of person that was in that mindset. And it was really important to me that people knew that I was sincere. I mean, I had a service that I knew people needed, and I had studied and become as neurotic as I could be about understanding it. And so I wanted to share that because I've always had a core value of helping other people, which is why I formed the Women's Wisdom Network, which is just women helping women. And the point is that most people don't understand referrals. They think it's transactional. And it was very much transactional. I gave you a card, you gave me a card. And as my good friend Bob Berg, who's a mutual friend of your husband's and me, when he wrote Endless Referrals, we talked about that you don't take a card unless you're going to do something with it. And here's the gift that we have. You talked about my golden Rolodex, which very few people will remember what a Rolodex was. But if I have a personal connection for whatever reason, to me, that's kind of a pretty amazing thing. I'll even call it a divine connection, because there's a lot of people in the world. But what about you and I? How come in this moment, in this time, and in this demographic where you're there and I'm here, do we connect? Generally, it's because of relationships. And so we've gone from not being transactional to being relational. And that's the key that makes it different.
Yeah, like you said, I know that I've been to networking meetings and everyone's just exchanging cards, especially back in the old days. Now there are all these digital ways, but then what do? You come home and you put them in a pile, and eventually they get recycled or thrown into the trash.
Actually,
because they're meaningless, right?
Your dry cleaner gets all of your leads because they're in your suit when you go to get it cleaned. So, yes. Bob taught me early that if you take a card, you've made a commitment to do something with it. And one of the key things is that if you're asking for business, it's sort of like asking for a cup of coffee. You might want one now, but you probably don't want one if you've just had 2 or 3. There's a timing device in there, and there's a reason for the support. And so instead of just taking the card and putting it in your pocket and saying, oh, I'll get back to you, it's one of those things from Miguel Ruiz on the 4 agreements. If you take the card and you make a commitment, then you have to be impeccable with your word, which is the first of the 4 agreements. And so I would take the card and write a note. The note was different, though. Instead of writing a note that said, oh, it's so nice to meet you. If I can, if you ever have anybody that needs my services, I'd really appreciate your referral. All about you. No, all about them. So imagine the tone that changes when the note says, hey, Kay, I really appreciated meeting you at the last BNI meeting. I know there's ways for me to leverage my sphere of influence to help support your business. Let me know how to do that and when we can set a time to talk.
Wow. What a huge
Totally
difference that is, huh?
Because
Totally different.
Because people are struggling for voice. You started early in this podcast about my obsession with connection, because communication is so fractured. The average attention span of an adult today is 8.5 seconds. Every interruption costs you 23 minutes and 17 seconds. Do you think they're going to remember you if they met 20 people that day? So what does it take to stand out? And when you want to look at building a successful, you called it Rolodex, I'll call it a community. It's about being personal, being relevant, and being consistent. This is not about asking you every month, hey, do you have a referral for me? Do you have a referral for me? But more or less a touch that builds a relationship that leverages what you do and who you do it for, and them to your sphere of influence. Because target marketing, Jeff Slutsky, one of our former NSA people, would talk about broadcasting versus narrowcasting. If I want to support you and I give you referrals and I talk to you about, just as you and I did, about how to leverage this beautiful podcast that you do, how do you do that? Well, you do it with intention, and it takes monitoring and measuring. So the one thing we keep missing, though, because you talked about it, the digital connection, is that, oh yeah, we can pick it up in our phone. That's just terrific. But what happens when it goes into that digital, deep dive? It never comes out.
Black hole, right?
Yeah. And so what do? The personal touch never fails, ever. Because when somebody gets something handwritten and it's specific to them and it's relevant to them, and then you collect the information that makes more relevant so you can help support what they do and who they do it for in the event that you have an opportunity to leverage them. We're looking for trust. We're looking for implied endorsement. You go into a strange city and suddenly you need a hairdresser. You want somebody is going to make you look good. So where do you go? You go to the people that know, that you admire, or that you trust, and get a referral from them. And then you feel better about making the next step. Make sense?
Absolutely. So, what do you do if you're networking and you're meeting with someone and you realize that they're not someone that you could help, or that that is a fit for you? How do you handle that?
Well, see, I have a little different attitude with that. Even if you're a mud wrestler, I'm going to figure at some point somebody's going to ask me for a recommendation. There are certain people that belong in your, what I call the inner circle, your MVPs, your most valuable people. Those are people that really make a good fit, whether it's a past client, a current client, family friend, someone you know in your sphere of influence, someone that you use in your day-to-day life. Those people get treated differently. We call it the MVPs, your most valuable people. And they are generally, we start with 50 people. And I get a lot of pushback on this. Oh, I don't know 50 people. Oh, yes, you do. Who's your hairdresser? Who's your doctor? Who's your favorite pool guy? I mean, whatever it is, you've got 50 people that know, like, and trust you. And like I said, you're not asking for, I personally don't. Some of my clients will actually say, you know what, I'd like to put you in my MVP as a referral network. And, of course it's a referral network, but I don't want it to look like I am pandering. But I do want to position myself and my services in the event they know someone, because we know they know at least 250 people or more. They connect with that many people. And someday, someone may need my services. And if they do, I'd like to be one of the people you recommend. Is that okay? Say yes. And then we say, well, what do I have to do to help you? I said, well, if you have somebody, even one a year, that would be optimum. One a year, sure. Now, like I said, you don't need a cup of coffee every minute of the day, but you do want one tomorrow or maybe 3 months from now. So it's about being top of mind as a resource and as a support to their business as well.
So just like in sales, it's about the customer. Networking, it's about who you're networking with. It's about them. What's in it for me, right? As the old saying goes. So I love that take on networking. How do you create touch points along the way to stay in touch with your network?
Well, I built a program because for me, it was natural. I have an insane curiosity about what makes you happy. And so if you have a dog and it happens to be a Doxy, it's National Doxy Day, I'm going to send you something for the dog or drop something off. I just want you to think personal and relevant and consistent. So we want to take these MVPs and every month touch them in some way. So it requires getting some personal information. And how do you start? Well, you start with saying, hey, Kay, I'm updating my database here because it's a beginning of a new year. Lots of things change for people. So, confirm email, mailing address, and birthdays. And a lot of people in my age group go, hey, we don't celebrate birthdays anymore. And I say, you know what, that's great. But you know what we like to do? We like to make a donation to your favorite charity in your name. And so whether it's veterans or women's shelters or pet shelters or kids or education or reading, it makes much more sense to make a donation in their name on their birthday. Makes them look like a hero, makes you look like you care. So, let's just say you do the initial touch and then, you do maybe I like doing silly holidays just for fun or something that's relevant. Like, if it's Veterans Day and they're a veteran, their pet, their kids, if you've made a sale, the anniversary of that sale, there's just so many ways to touch people. And then it's got to be somewhat experiential. So what I find today is a lot of my clients want to use automation. Automation's great, but it's not personal. And when we do our program at Pepperdine, we talk about, do you want a virtual hug or a real one? Real one feels different. So we look at ways to acknowledge for people to be seen, value, and heard. Those are my 3 anchors: seen, value, and heard. So when you recognize their birthday, when you recognize events in their life, when you have an experiential event. Now, when possible, we have just even small or annual client event parties where people get together. People are starving for community. If you look at the statistics, we've gotten isolated. COVID didn't help that. And now we're looking at ways to be face-to-face because there is truly a physiological energy exchange when we're face-to-face. Now, Zoom's terrific. I mean, that's how you and I connect, and you connect to the world. At the end of the day, people want more. And if they know, like, and trust you, there's no barrier. And so when you put people together and they have a good time, or they come together for a common interest, whether it's helping the kids with school supplies or getting a pie at Thanksgiving or doing a food, drive for the community, it gives people a sense of belonging. And that's what we look for.
Right. That's a great point. Who, somebody might say, I don't want to celebrate my birthday, but who will turn down a donation to a charity? I mean, everyone would love that.
Their charity.
The charity of their choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not hard if you're thinking, because by the way, I'm not the most technological savvy person on the planet, but you can just literally print up a little card. And if it's a seasonal thing, you can put a seasonal decal on it. It's really not hard. There's lots of ways not to do things, but there's just when there's a will, there's a way. And so for me, it's understanding that they love, their dogs, or they are passionate about the animal shelter. Then just handle it. That's where they have their passion and their joy. Resonate with that. It makes it more personal.
Today's podcast is sponsored by the acclaimed book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition by Kay Miller. If you want to make more sales, you need to read this book. We'll even get you started with a free download of the first 2 chapters. Go to uncopyablesales.com/chapters to grab this offer right now.
Right. And one thing that I have found fascinating, I mean, it's not new anymore, but you can find out so much information online about their interest and what's important to them, their family. something that Steve and I do. We use a company called Send Out Cards. And have you heard of that company? I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So you will actually get a sample of what I send to each guest on my podcast. And I hate to spoil it, but I'm going to. I create a collage of all the women who've been on my show so far. And it's getting quite crowded, but I fit you right in there already. And it's orange and a collage and then a big thank you. And I send a couple brownies. So that kind of personal, when you're on the cover, when you're in the card, it's more meaningful to you. And I've done that also by getting information even on Facebook, like you said, somebody's dog. I love sending pictures of people's dogs to people. They don't throw that away. So yeah, something meaningful that connects you with what's important to them sounds like the secret sauce.
Yeah, Send Out Cards does a great job. One of my clients was at a trade show, and I was on it must have been one of my clients, and it was my face on the television. So he took a picture of me on the television at that thing and sent it to me. Of course, I didn't throw it away. It was so innovative, it was so creative, but it was so personal that it made, like I said, you just enjoy when somebody celebrates you. And really, that's what you're looking for, because if they smell commission breath, it's over. Now, not to say that you can't do that for someone. As an example, especially during COVID, some of my most creative clients literally created drive-bys to small businesses where they could hand out little things like the popcorn company or the cookie company, so that people got to participate and get out of the house without worrying about getting ill. But it also gave vision and hope and opportunity to the sphere of influence. So, like I said, some of them can be, it depends on who's in that list. And one of the common questions is, who's on the list? And people say, well, I don't know 50 people. We say, open up your phone. How many people you know whose names start with K? And all of a sudden there's K. What does she do? How does she do it? What could you do to promote her? Video, YouTube is still primo, even though TikTok seems to be big. But when you help other people share their message and their services, you're golden. And especially the people who are not IBM and don't have $1 million to spend on Super Bowl ads. Your ability to leverage great people to your own sphere of influence, your peers, your peeps, is what helps them, because it's also measured and monitored. So one of my clients, darling couple, gave 11 referrals to their insurance man. 11. Let's just say that was worth only $1,000 each. I'm just saying. So that's $11,000 he put in his pocket. And I said to my client, so how's that working for you? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, what does he do? Has he shown you any interest in referring you? And he said, well, no. I said, well, a couple of questions for that. Did you ask, or did you ask if there's some barrier in there? So let's just say his wife sold real estate, or his wife sold Mary Kate. Guess what? They're going to defer to their own. But good to know that, because the people that get in that inner circle get treated differently. Once a month, face to face, something of value, recognition on birthdays or in their life events, and definitely invited to client event parties or client event promotions. Everybody wants to be included. Everybody.
Well, one thing that we've touched on, but you are an unbelievable connector. And from the first time that you and I talked, you had, you couldn't write fast enough all the ideas of people that you could introduce me to, which you already have introduced me to. I mean, you're obviously now my new best friend, but you approached it in that way. But of course, this reciprocity is huge, because if you do something nice for me, of course, I want to do something nice for you. You've been so wonderful for me, wonderful to me, that I can't wait to help you. So I think that connection doesn't cost you anything, right? Connecting two people.
It really doesn't. And in the case of my guy that gave 11 transactions, what's incredibly valuable is the time and space and runway that you've developed relationships. And we have this enormous, incalculable spread now with the internet. The internet's a wonderful thing, but too much information doesn't help you. Specific information is what really, when you can drill down to where there's trust and comfort, is how you make a decision, because you always make it based on feeling. So yes, of course I would promote something like that. Women helping women is my core value. So why not? Why not share what your voice will be, which will be totally different than mine? So that whole mindset of scarcity goes away because there's just a bigger pie. Yeah. It's not like 3 slices are gone. And if you do really well, yay, good. And yes, you do want to have that reciprocity there, because you have given somebody lunch, 14 days in a row, and hopefully they want to buy something. Cialdini wrote a great book, The Power of Persuasion, and reciprocity is number 1. And again, you don't do it for tit for tat, but you want to do it where there's trust and that someone respects what you do well enough to literally share it with their people, because there's a big trust issue there. You give somebody a contractor that doesn't show up, that works both ways. So, they do have to be special to be in my MVP. But at the end of the day, everybody wants some kind of connection. So early in my career, there were women moving into an area where their husbands had jobs and they went to a job and the kids went to school. So they had a social network and the women were just sitting there. So I started something called the Princess Collection, because my whole life, when you said, what do you want to be when you grow up? It would have been fun to have been a princess. And I would invite them to dinner with other women who had just moved in. Well, everybody had the same issues. Where are you getting your hair done? Do you have a good anesthesia, doctor? But where do you get your nails done? I mean, they needed to have connection, and it wasn't as easy because they didn't have the implied social circle to do it. So if you're in sales, beyond your product, what great book are you reading? What new product or service did you find that you really love? How about we had a number of women, especially during COVID, if you're a wine drinker, not that I'm very good at it, but they would all do wine and cheese at like 5:00 on Wednesdays. It was just fun. It was all on Zoom, of course, because again, people want inclusion. They want that energy that comes from outside of their own vortex. And it doesn't, when you said, well, what if they don't fit? They may not be fit because they're a butthead. Okay. If they're not into sharing, I don't want them in my group, because my group shares. And not because they're, so altruistic, but because it makes sense to help other people. At the end of the day, Kay, we're all here in service to each other. End of story. I mean, the person that sweeps the floor, the person that turns on the lights, the people that, do the dishes in restaurants, everybody serves everybody. And all you want to do is elevate how that experience happens, help them be seen, valued, and heard, and be able to share that with other people. What's wrong with that one? Help me with that one.
That's right. It's, I think about that in sales, those types of connections. It's the right thing to do, but it also helps you be more successful. So it really is a win-win. It makes everybody better off. I think it's a win-win for everyone.
I just finished a leadership academy with 25 very successful people. And I was shocked at how many of them, although they had heroes, they had people that they absolutely, in a New York second would promote, but they never showed it. How do you show that? Well, outside of putting together a referral network, depending on what kind of business and sales you're in, how about LinkedIn? Giving a testimonial. Now, people don't know how to write them. If I say to you, okay, I'd really like a great testimonial for you, if you really feel comfortable about our program together, and you're like, oh, I'd like to, I don't know how to write it. Of course, how do you, well, just what you just said, how about if I write that back to you and then you tweak it and put it in your own voice? Help people feel comfortable about making decisions. If somebody's hiring you to speak, if somebody's hiring you to do their accounting, help them feel comfortable. And because that social proof is so important, and you can do it electronically, yes. Behavioral interviewing, asking people, more to give you more around a competency so that you have a better idea of what they can do. And then you can refer them more easily. There's just so many ways to help other people. Personal gatherings, small personal gatherings, 10, if you have 50 people you're touching once a month, you do a gathering with 15 people, twice a month, different group. Just to have fun with it. Again, but make it so that they feel that it's them you're interested in and not what they can do for you. Make sense?
And that totally makes sense. And, I think that we have to keep that top of mind because, of course, especially maybe as salespeople, for example, we have quotas, we have goals that we need to meet. So, of course, we need to make our sales. And sometimes I think that we let that cloud our judgment and become the forefront instead of knowing that, hey, if I do these other things well, the things that you're describing, then your success and your sales will happen. So it's all part of this, I don't know, puzzle. It's part of the puzzle.
It's actually part of an initiative that says, I value you so much that I want to share you with other people who can value as much. In other words, I want to share the love. Now, you brought up writing handwritten notes. And no disrespect, but if you get a birthday card from your insurance company, you're pretty sure Mr. Allstate, Mr. State Farm did not sign it. So I encourage people to do what you've done with your own logo and your colors, but make it make it so it comes from you and not from the company, because that sounds solicitive to me. It sounds like pandering. So I've encouraged people with birthday cards to do a birthday card, and then if they're going to print their company, it's on the back. We do different things for different people. So one of my most successful colleagues, when she learned to send out birthday cards, it was nice. They call it, oh, that's so nice. But what she started to do, especially with the grandparents, because you know how annoying they are. They just are so crazy about their grandkids. She put a crisp $1 bill in the kids' birthday cards. And, when you're a kid, $1, well, at least when we were a kid, and it was brand new. So it was like really crisp. For the adults, she put in lottos or, a cookie, depending on them, a discount for, in one case, for a local bakery. Now think about that. Local bakeries struggle because, the big box have their own thing. So what she did was she got a ticket that gave them a free cookie or a free something at that bakery. And of course, only paid for the ones that got redeemed. Well, what was she doing? Promoting the bakery. Nobody goes in and buys one cookie. Like me, you want to buy as many as you can eat in a day. But I mean, there's so many ways to help people penetrate, target, get connected with people who can use them.
Well, I love the way that you're talking about being so creative because our uncopyable framework that we talk about all the time is look at what everyone else is doing and don't do it. Do something different, stand out, be unique. So those are some great specific examples that people can use. We're almost out of time. And I did want to ask you, you had mentioned something that intrigued me. The biggest mistake that most people make when they are trying to successfully network. What would you say that is? Consistency.
They think just because they see them at church or just because they see them, in town, especially small towns, that's going to work. Remember that there's measuring and monitoring. So again, if I buy you lunch 12 times in a row and you never even return my calls, I'm going to replace you with someone who is. It doesn't mean I'm going to abandon you, but I mean, it's clear that you don't have a way or a support, a mutual support, and that's okay. But we measure every month. And here's an interesting factor. And by the way, this is so hard for most people, but we ask them when we're coaching them to block a given day and a given time to contact like 5 twice a week, which is 10, which will rotate to almost 50 every week. Pop-bys, face-to-face, birthday cards, calls, video updates, whatever it is. But we measure it. And we know that when when you're like into it, because it takes a year, give or take, you want to monitor who is referred you, even if it doesn't work out. I refer you a big client and they go a different direction. I still thought of you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you reward them in a way? And here's an interesting little spot. I'm not going to give you a $10 Starbucks card because you gave me a $500,000 client. It's going to have to go farther than that. But you measure it, you monitor it, and you know that once you've seen over 60, 70%, you're going to see referrals roll in. It's a long term. It's not short term. You're looking at relationships one step at a time. You value, you acknowledge, you share the love. That's pretty much how it works.
Well, your long track record of success, building businesses, like you said, supporting women, doing so much more. Like I said, I can't fit it all in an intro for sure. So I encourage you to look at Terri's bio because it's just really fun to see all the things that you have done and to be happy for you for the success that you have well deserved. So, Terri, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast.
In Italian, we'd say molto piacere. Being 100% Italian, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Sales, your source for secrets you can use to make more sales. Check the show notes for links and contact information. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please spread the word by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. You can always learn more by going to uncopyablesales.com/podcast. Until next time, go out and supercharge your sales like a true uncopyable rock star.